Hello and welcome to the first installment of Beyond Rally, Fueling the Future, a new multi-part podcast series brought to you by SportsPro and WRC Promoter, who are the commercial rights holder of the World Rally Championship and also the European Rally Championship. I am your host, Michael Long, and I'm the SportsPro's editorial director, and I'll be at the wheel, so to speak, throughout this series as we explore motorsport's leadership within the field of sports sustainability, and also how WRC is shaping the future of responsible rallying. So to kick things off and really to set the scene for everything we're going to be digging into for the forthcoming series, I'm delighted to be joined for this first episode by Marc de Jong, Head of Business Development at WRC Promoter, and also Cristiana Pace, Dr Cristiana Pace, CEO and founder of e-novation Consulting, a consultancy firm that works with dozens of sports organizations, including WRC, to devise and implement sustainability strategies. So firstly, welcome to you both. It's great to have you with me for this one.
Thank you, Mike.
It's a pleasure to be here, Mike. Thank you.
Good stuff. Well, let's start from the beginning. So let's take a macro view of the field, the sport of motorsport, and where it sits today in the realm of sustainability. You two both very, very familiar with how the motorsport world operates, and you have a lot of history, a lot of experience operating in the motorsport sustainability space. So you can obviously articulate the fact that motorsport really operates in this kind of highly advanced sustainability framework developed by its global governing body, the FIA, spanning everything from kind of sustainable engineering to emissions reduction and kind of all forms of environmental responsibility. But Cristiana, I wanted to come to you first just to kind of frame that in a bit more depth and just discuss really how motorsport's approach to sustainability as a sport differs from other sports in the industry.
Thank you, Mike. It's a very good question. I would say motorsport, because it's motorsport, is a very data-driven sport. So we love data. We collect millions of data points and we analyze data points. So even the strategy and the framework has been built upon using data. And it's very much data-driven, especially if you have a look at what the FIA published back in 2019 and the goals and what they want to achieve are very much all based on the wider framework of United Nations and the global climate reduction. So it's a very strong framework on how all the motorsport property championship should operate in terms of pushing towards the same objective. I have to say, it's kind of like if we dig down onto some of the pillars, there are, of course, some reduction for all the championship, but especially the FIA use a framework that is based on their environmental accreditation. So they piloted and put in place in 2011, actually, framework that is very similar to the ISO 14001 framework for corporates that is about sustainable management of the infrastructure of going racing. So, and they deploy that and they've given a framework for the teams, for the championship, for all the stakeholders to come on board with that. And that, I think, was the first quantitative step, because you have to do lots of data taken and lots of data manipulation in terms of being able to achieve that framework. That is really important for them. And all the F1 teams have got it, all the World Championship have got it, WEC teams will have to achieve it by the end of this year. So, and all the rally promoters, thanks to WRC, they also need to achieve the 2-star or the 3-star, depending where they are on the journey. I think that has been really driving the sustainability in motorsport, but there is also other pieces, as you said. The innovation is a massive piece for motorsport, the sustainable innovation. Efficiency was a piece and is a piece still from the 80s. So that is really important. But it's also how we breed innovation to then bring to sustainability and to make not just fuel reduction or use different fuels, but as well in infrastructure, how we make the events more sustainable. What is the technology around the event and how we can actually use those technology to gather in data and to understand the hotspot and to reduce them. So it's a very comprehensive framework what the FIA has produced and is in line with the IOC that obviously is the governing body of all the international federation. The part of human rights as well is included. It's not just environment. Is in line with the United Nations Sport for Climate Change framework that most of the championship and teams are embracing. Sport for Nature, for example, that WRC has got a really big piece on biodiversity and UNESCO and other framework that have been put in place. So I would say comprehensive and encompasses all the others as well.
Yeah, you mentioned many different bodies and stakeholders involved in, composing this framework for motorsport sustainability. How exactly do those organizations cross over, work together to devise this framework? And when and how did the framework kind of start coming together and materializing into something so comprehensive for motorsport?
So as I said, it's like the FIA published that strategy in 2019 and it was already aligned with the United Nations Framework for Sport for Climate Change, setting target for 2030 and 2040. So the net zero and the reduction halfway through. Then it becomes a bit more sophisticated. So obviously human rights is a big part, especially if we think about where we're racing and also like how we procure the material that we race. Like if you think about championship that have got batteries, that is a massive piece. So I think is the USP of motorsport is the fact that they really linked with the car manufacturer, and therefore there is all that technology that is not just from motorsport to road cars, but also vice versa, especially in terms of best practice. When we talk about sustainability, OEMs have got a massive amount of people working on that for many years. So the crossover are quite easy to do, especially when those manufacturers are coming into the motorsport. And there is a very good relationship with all the stakeholders about talking about each other and trying to make those from motorsport to road and from road to motorsport. So that is like my experience with that. I have to say each championship as well bring different take of different things. So some more on technology, some have focused more on other things. So it's kind of like, is this the FIA being the guardian of all the championship and across all the championship that have brought together this really wider piece and wider framework? Mark, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, because I think that's obviously quite a good experience for you as well to work with the FIA and with all the other actors involved in defining this framework.
Thank you, Cristiana. For me, the topic of sustainability is wrapped up in being a good member of the community, taking your responsibility. And when I say we're part of the community, I think rallying more than any of the other motorsports has got that link, because we drive real cars on real roads that outside of competition are being used by people every day, passed by people's communities, passed through nature. No better illustration of that as the recent Safari Rally. And if you want that sport to continue to thrive, then you'll need to take that responsibility very seriously. So the FIA guidelines, the most recent ones being published in 2019, was a really good opportunity for us to write down everything that we want to achieve in a big book, which we call the Sustainability Roadbook.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you specifically, obviously, about the Sustainability Roadbook and this Beyond Rally kind of unified platform that you have as a series as WRC, operating within this wider motorsport ecosystem and FIA framework that has just been discussed there. But really, WRC seems to have gone, above and beyond and even further than has been expected with your own strategy, I guess, with this blueprint, as you say, the Sustainability Roadbook that outlines a really comprehensive and sophisticated, I would say, sustainability roadmap. So can you talk a little bit about the overarching, vision, objectives of Beyond Rally, and of specifically the document that I think you launched, it was about a year ago, wasn't it, in April 2024?
I think before going to the detail, I think it is worthwhile spending a few seconds on that overarching landscape that we're in. As I said before, we go to rallies, we go to people's environments, we go to communities. We drive cars, which most people own as their principal form of a daily mobility. And we work through that with car manufacturers and technology suppliers in the automotive industry that have got hugely exciting, innovating technologies to bring to bear to improve motorsports for everybody. So I guess we are being guided by two overarching principles. Number one is it's not necessarily just about traveling from A to B in the fastest way possible, but it's about learning something on that journey that you can give back to general mobility. And I think that's extremely important that you're conscious of that. The second element of this is the principle that if you're not part of the solution, you're by definition part of the problem. And again, it's something we've been very aware of, and which has driven our wish to document it all together in the Sustainability Roadbook, which ended up being roughly 60 pages, and goes into very great detail of what we're going to do, why we're doing it, when we're going to do it, and how you can hold us accountable for that.
Absolutely. And having read it cover to cover, Marc, I can say that there's a hell of a lot of detail in there, as you say. So what kind of work, goes into producing something like this that you ultimately are holding yourselves to account on and others are holding you to account on? There's a lot of statements in there and forward-looking, aspirations and targets and things like that. But, how much measurement and monitoring and production and just stakeholder management and buy-in goes into putting together something of that breadth and depth?
I think it's easy to underestimate, because even if you spend hours, weeks, months, a year in compiling it all, you still have to do it in a way that actually takes an entire championship with you. The championship is not one company, not one organization. It is, if you like, a fleet of individual vehicles moving forward. Some might be driven by the organizers of events, some by the competitors, some by the suppliers in the background, the media, the marshals that help organize a rally, the spectators even have a role to play. So explaining to everybody how they fit into this structure is a big part of it, and communicating about it and giving people an opportunity to recognize that the longest journey starts with single steps, and outlining how everybody else can join in to take this journey together with us towards the targets that are described in the book. You go about that by doing great research, by aligning yourself with organizations that have got great expertise. Cristiana's organization was one of them, but we've also spoken to UNESCO. We've spoken to the European Space Agency. We speak to other sports federations. All this information comes together because, being a good global citizen and taking your responsibilities, that's a value a lot of companies and a lot of organizations share. So putting that together and then explaining it to people as the third step.
And if I can add to what Marc said, is like we don't tend to have to underestimate how difficult it is to put a measurement framework on these kind of things. And this is what we have been working together with Marc and WRC, is like how we can measure all these things, how we can collect the data, how we can educate the people on how they have to collect the data, because part of the bigger picture is actually to make the events more sustainable, but the events are in the hands of the organizer and of the national federation. So it's kind of like how we, together with the WRC, run like a quarterly workshop with all those stakeholders to try to get them to understand the importance of collecting the data and how they can measure the data, and to discuss how overcome difficulties on data that they cannot find. So I think what Marc was saying is completely right, is getting the stakeholders together, get them understand what they need to do, and also communicate that. But it's also an element of actually measuring and have enough data that are relevant for then communicate and reporting at the end of every year what has been done and what is still to do.
Sure. And just to dig a little bit deeper into that, can you speak, perhaps both of you, but maybe one for Marc, just in terms of the ethos or the conceptual kind of structure of the Roadbook? You've got kind of identified 5 key pillars that you're working on across the across the series, and getting each of those stakeholders feeding into in various ways. But can you speak a little bit about just how it's been structured, the Roadbook?
Yes. So the Roadbook has 4 specific pillars of action, and then a 5th pillar that ties it all together. In terms of the actions, we look first of all at climate change mitigation, a challenge that affects many of us. The second one, which is more unique to rally, and probably we're the only motorsport to look at that this closely, is conservationism and the protection of biodiversity. We've signed a pledge with UNESCO to protect UNESCO's mixed and natural heritage sites around the world. And I think that's extremely relevant because we're the only ones competing in nature in that particular way. In addition to, trying to protect and preserve, we also try to innovate. Innovation that includes the use of 100% sustainable fuel or fossil-free fuel. I simplify it often a bit by saying no dinosaurs were hurt in the making of our fuel. We've been using it since 2022, and it's made a big difference. 77% of our competitive greenhouse gas emissions have been reduced. The fourth of the pillar is social responsibility. And social responsibility includes anything from community activities to promoting and being inclusive of minority communities being part of our championship. We are a global championship, but not everybody has the access to the same means. So we're trying to promote initiatives where young talented drivers, including female drivers, get a chance to be part of the World Rally Championship. And the final pillar is responsible management. Because, as I said before, we are a big group of organizations all working together under the umbrella of the FIA World Rally Championship. And we've got to explain to people what they have to do and how they do it. And we use techniques or systems like the FIA accreditation program to help people understand what they can do on a local level in order to improve the situation within their organization, to be more sustainable, to live by the adage of reduce, reuse, recycle, what you have to measure, how you have to measure it, and how you take steps to improve. So those 5 pillars together make up the Roadbook.
And Mike, just to complement one thing that Marc said, is like in terms of biodiversity and conservation, that is an amazing thing that they're doing. And obviously, like we have seen it lately with the Rally Kenya as well. And this is one of the pillars that many other sports, not just motorsport, is missing in their strategy. So the fact that obviously, rally is very visible. They race in forests, the races in areas where there is a lot of biodiversity, and therefore, as Marc said, they need to protect that. But the way that they go about it is not just we need to protect it, we can replant the trees. It's actually this partnership with ESA that the European Special Agency that the WRC did is amazing. It's about collecting data points and actually understand what kind of biodiversity, like technically and scientifically, is there and how can be put it back together or actually improved compared to what it was there before. So is all this part about that is really missed in other championship and also other sport.
Yeah, thank you for that. And it shines through in what you've been saying there is that the sustainability roadbook and WRC's approach to sustainability is it really leaving no stone unturned, super comprehensive, very detailed. And we're going to be digging into each of those 5 pillars you've outlined there, Marc, over the course of this series. And I really look forward to digging into the weeds and the detail and really surfacing some of those case studies, those examples of implementation and how that really comes to life, during and around your rallies throughout the season. But just to conclude this first episode of the series, we're going to be hearing more from you, in fact, Marc, in which we also spoke to you, but it's a snippet from a conversation we had during our recent Black Book Motorsport Forum in London at the end of March. And I think speaking to you and seeing this snippet, I think what really shines through, and I think our audience will agree, is it really shows the ambitious nature and comprehensive breadth of the WRC's work in sustainability, but also your personal passion that you have in your role for this particular area as a kind of cornerstone of, the WRC's overarching business strategy and why you exist. And we'll jump into that shortly. But firstly, just to thank you both for joining for this episode 1, just to kind of set the scene for what's to come. Thank you both for your thoughts. Thank you to our listeners, of course, for joining us as well. We'll be back very soon for episode 2. So please do stay tuned for that. But yeah, Marc, Cristiana, thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.
My role is that of Head of Business Development. I look after special projects within WRC. I've been with the company for nearly 25 years, and I look at the projects beyond the horizon. So projects that need extra preparation time, extra attention, or extra technical knowledge. Sustainability is an important one of that. And I handle that together with some of my colleagues and looking for the right companies to pair with to tell the sustainability story. It's a very important story for our sport, a big priority for us. I think as a sport, we've always tried to be respectful of the environment we go into. I think that's inherent in our sport of rally. We go to other people's places where they live, where they work. We drive on real roads. We don't drive in a stadium or in a racing circuit that's purpose-built. We have to work with the community for that. So you're always aware that you want to minimize your impact on people that live there. You want to restore if you've caused any damage. So that is part of our DNA in our sport. What I think is new is that last year we actually wrote that together and brought it all under one umbrella, which we call Beyond Rally, and which we expressed in our sustainability roadbook. 60 plus pages of what we do, why we do it, and how we're going to do it, and what our targets for the future are. Sustainability is a topic that affects us all, so we can learn from everybody. We learn from other motorsports. We work together with other sports federations. We even work together with organizations like the European Space Agency to enhance our knowledge, to be better at understanding what impact we cause and how we can mitigate it. I think that's a fundamental part of the strategy that we follow as WRC, and that's ingrained in Beyond Rally. Beyond Rally is an umbrella. Beyond Rally is an umbrella that covers innovation, using the right type of technology, encompasses climate change protection or mitigation of the impact we have from emitting CO2 and other greenhouse gases. Again, part of that is making sure you use the right technology, and part is reducing your travel, your need to ship goods and equipment to other sides of the world. We look after biodiversity, and there is no better example than the Safari Rally we've recently visited to show how we interact with nature. And that's really important, to be protective of that. So that's why we signed the UNESCO World Heritage Pledge. We protect sites of natural importance. It's furthermore going into social issues, diversity, integration. We are a global sport. We need to be encompassing for everybody. That's why inclusivity is also an important part of it. It's the fourth pillar of our roadbook. It is a reflection of the fact that we are a global sport and that we have to bring everybody together under that umbrella. And finally, it's about management. How do you get so many different organizations working towards the same target, which has been set by our World Federation, the FIA? Therefore, it is such a comprehensive umbrella that we had to create. That's part of the strategy, is making sure that everybody knows which direction we're going. We used Roadbook because that's what we use in rallies, to know where every competitor is going. But this is the one where all the stakeholders in rally can look up and saying, okay, by this date, we need to achieve that. By that date, we need to be hitting that target. And if we want to be ending up at that destination, we've got to start walking from here and hit all those markers along the way. The biggest journey starts with a single step, and that's what the Roadbook is for. Guide us on the steps towards our target. I think as a background to our sustainability roadbook, you need to see that from the decision of the FIA to publish their long-term vision for sustainability of our sport. I firmly believe that you summarize that by saying, WRC and every other motorsports, be careful. If you're not perceived to be part of the solution, by definition, people will see you as part of the problem. And I think that's the first motivator that brought us to focus on creating a roadmap, creating milestones. And using WRC terminology, that was the first time we conceived of that roadbook. It took actually nearly 3 years to put it all together and to be detailed and to be specific of what do you encompass. Do the research. Where are you today? Where do you need to go? What steps do you need to take? Who can help you to get on that way? And I think that was the thinking behind creating the Sustainability Roadbook. It took some time to put it together, but I'm really proud of the work that we have done all together in our company in putting that on paper and give the world something to hold us accountable to. So from here on in, we'll have to produce annual updates. We will have to let people know how we're going. Maybe some of the assumptions, we learn along the way that we need to make adjustments, and we'll have to explain why we're making adjustments. We're not saying that, that book is the perfect blueprint, but it's the book that set us on our way. And I think it's a living thing, just like Beyond Rally is a living thing that will evolve from year to year, from project to project, and encompass many different things that we'll find on our way. I think some of the best examples of the effect of the Roadbook sit in the take-up that we get from our organizers. Every rally in the WRC is 3-star accredited now. And many of the rallies in the European Rally Championship, another championship we look after, are on the road to achieve the same thing. I think as WRC, we are the championship with the most accredited organizations that have achieved 2 or 3 stars. That is a direct impact from the work we're doing with the Roadbook. Of course, many of our stakeholders knew of the work in progress before. You don't start that from one day to the next. You make that a really inclusive process to create. But it's inspired people to get on that road with us together. And if I saw all the activities that were done, for example, in recent Rally Japan, there's so much detail that was being put into organizing that rally from a perspective of reducing the impact on the environment, reducing waste, reusing materials, replacing power generators that everybody knows or usually run on petrol with fuel cells, which are a little bit more expensive, but definitely an investment for the future. To also create opportunities for disabled spectators in the WRC, which is not that easy. If you build a stadium, it's much easier to bring a disabled facility for as part of that structure. We, with the help of our good friends at Toyota, created something that is portable, that can be used there on site in the middle of a rally stage. Those are the light bulbs, the sparkles that make me proud to look at the inspiration that's been derived from an initiative called Beyond Rally. Beyond Rally and the Sustainability Roadbook is basically built on 5 pillars. The first one of that is innovation. What technologies can you use to go forward in reducing your impact, in improving mobility? I think a key example of that is the introduction of 100% sustainable fuel. I always joke a little bit, making it simple, but no dinosaurs were hurt in the making of our fuel. We are not adding more fossil carbon to the world by running around with our rally cars. That makes a good example of innovation to the good. And I hope that many, many new initiatives will be tested with us on the toughest test track that the WRC can provide. I think the second one, very important, is mitigating climate change. Mitigating climate change isn't just from the rally cars, but also what we cause by shipping things overseas. In that area, for example, we produced the freight that we use and the number of people to produce television, where we've used now a system where we bring the TV pictures back to a central base in Helsinki, reducing the amount of freight we've got to ship, reducing the amount of people that have to attend the events. For that, we have to rely on technology. The fast fiber optic network of Tata, for example. Those are absolute examples of how we work together to mitigate against greenhouse gas emissions. Third pillar is very much protection of biodiversity. And that is something that, we're always aware of, that our rallies happen in nature. Safari Rally is one of the best examples there, because we don't get closer to nature in any event than in Safari Rally, but it actually applies to many other places as well. I know over the years in WRC, we've had examples of protecting young livestock on farms, to schedule the events at times that we were not affecting that. So we have lots of practical examples and lots of experience in protecting biodiversity, but we're now going one step further and following the best practices of people like UNESCO to ensure that we can be held accountable. Fourth pillar in this is inclusivity. It's all the social elements of WRC. We're a global championship, and we recognize that we get into contact with lots of cultures. And that means that young, old, male, female, different religions, different disabilities will embrace all of that. We've long had competitors in our championship with disabilities, for example. We've long had competitors from every different continent on the world, bar Antarctica. I don't think there's many rally drivers in Antarctica. So we are experienced in it. but we have to get better. So we put that as a target, and our female driver development program at the moment is a key example of that. The final pillar of our roadbook is responsible management. Now, once you set all these targets that we put in the roadbook, how are you going to ensure that your whole organization and that the organizations of your stakeholders follow you? Some of that is done through very theoretical systems certified by people like ISO, pledges that are issued by the World Sports Federation's government. But some of it is really practical, is how do you tell that story, engage people, make people part of your journey, get them to help you collecting the rubbish, reducing materials that you might be using, selecting materials to make things that are more durable or that create less waste when they come to their end of their useful life. That is a process of communication, and it's a process of setting targets that everybody's got to understand and work with. That's arguably the most important part of our entire roadbook, is how do we do it? If there's one thing I'd love people to take away from our initiatives in sustainability, our Beyond Rally initiative, our sustainability roadbook, it's that, these tough journeys start with single steps. And I know people look at motorsports and says, these guys only just want to go fast. But there is a link between going fast and going further. And it's really simple. To move an object, physics will tell you, you need energy. Engineers will use that energy to make the car go fast. How do you make it go fast? Well, you reduce waste, you reduce weight, you reduce drag, you reduce friction. All these kind of technologies that are being developed are there to make sure there's maximum efficiency, there's maximum bang for your buck out of that liter of fuel. That same technology that makes rally cars and race cars go faster can be adapted to make road cars go further. And in the end, of reducing the amount of energy we consume, it's got to be a good thing for our planet. It's not that difficult in its fundamentals. It might all sound really complex. There's fancy words and jargon and terminology, but it is actually quite simple. And it's got to live in your heart, and you've got to drive it forward from a belief. And I think that's a key value that we've carried with us in WRC for many years, and hopefully are able to explain it to people now. And hopefully people come on that epic adventure with us.